I have no idea what I'm doing, and he helps me with
That doesn't look like it, man. That doesn't look like you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, you'd be surprised, yeah.
You're watching the very first Dragon's Dogma podcast. As far as we know.
All right, this is episode 2 of our Dragon's Dogma podcast that doesn't have a name yet. Today I'm joined by Nick, better known as Nickesponja. If you've played Dragon's Dogma 2 on PC and touched mods at all, you've most definitely used his work. The idea for this conversation is pretty simple. I don't want this to be a checklist interview or a deep dive into raw code. I want to talk about the thinking behind Nick's mods, the constraints of Dragon's Dogma 2 modding in general, what works, what doesn't work, and where the whole scene might be heading. We'll touch on some of the Nick's big projects and hopefully demystify modding a bit for people who are curious but don't know where to start. So yeah, Nick, thanks again for doing this with me. Thanks for trusting me. For anyone who somehow doesn't know you yet, I'll let you take it from here. Could you introduce yourself to the viewer/listener?
Yeah, hello everyone. As you said, my name is Nick, and I'm from Spain, far away from where most people who use my mods live. Yeah, and I'm the author of quite a few gameplay mods for DD2. And I just released one of them, Bestiary, which is a massive overhaul to enemy movesets, and so far it's receiving a lot of positive feedback. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining me today. So before we dive into the deep caves I don't know, of Dragon's Dogma modding in general. Just a quick section. This one's called Meet the Modder. That's what we did with Austin as well. But this time is going to be much shorter. Do you want to tell us, how did you first fall into modding Dragon's Dogma 2 specifically?
Yeah, well, I've always loved the idea of modding, and I've actually done a few mods for Skyrim, which is like the biggest game for modding that has ever been made. And I'm fairly young still, and when I got into the modding scene for Skyrim, it was already too late, in the sense that everything had already been done. Mm-hmm. And the things that hadn't been done were like extremely complicated.
Well, I mean, yeah, Skyrim is a totally different beast. It's like, if you can think of something, there's a mod for it.
Yeah. So the mods that I made for Skyrim are really like super simple things, but that somehow nobody else had thought about. But it was a bit too late. I wasn't going to start learning all the intricacies of Skyrim modding. But parallel to this, I absolutely loved Dragon's Dogma 1, and I played it for basically a decade. I had it on the original PS3, like I had the original version of Dragon's Dogma 1, and then I got Dark Arisen when it came out, and then I bought it on PC as well, just for modding actually, because there was this world difficulty mod that was really cool, that I wanted to play. And so when I heard that the sequel DD2 was being made in the RE engine, which already had modding tools, I knew it was my chance to get into modding this engine and this game. And as soon as the game came out and I finished it, I was like, I'm gonna start making mods for this as soon as possible.
Did you always know Dragon's Dogma 2 was coming? It's an off-script question. You don't have to answer it, but I just wanted to ask you this. Like, did you always know it was coming? Like,
no. I admit I had very little hope. When they announced they were doing an anniversary special, that's when I got some hope. Mm-hmm. But prior to that, not really, no.
What about a DLC? Do you think they're working on something, or no?
Yeah, I'm honestly more hopeful for Itsuno's NES game, actually.
Oh yes, the one with 10 cents, yeah?
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping will give us that, will scratch that itch.
Scratch the itch, yeah. But we don't have a lot of information about it. All we know is that it's an action RPG game. I'm gonna be checking it out as soon as it drops. But we don't even know what the game will be about. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm heaps excited. When preparing for this interview, I checked your Nexus page. This is the first thing I checked, and it says that you're a physicist. So I wanted to ask you if that's because I mean it requires you to have an analytical mind. So does that analytical background affect the way you approach modding?
Oh, absolutely. First off, it helps with the coding, because you need to be smart about the things that you code and how you approach the problems. But also all the math background that I have helps quite a bit, especially when I have to work with vectors or matrices, which is an absolute pain in the ass. But thankfully, I have dealt with a lot of those when I was at university. So yeah, I've even used the equation of a parabola to code a boomerang attack for Bestiary. I wish my students share the same opinion.
The students?
Yeah, because I teach math, and no, they are not very interested in how the equation of a parabola can be used to code an attack in a video game.
Are you comfortable with me including the fact that you teach math?
Yeah, I made that public in my Discord.
So yeah, like the most prominent Dragon's Dogma 2 modder nowadays also teaches math.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Alright, dude, thank you very much. This pretty much concludes the first section, Meet the Modder, unless you want to add something. It's not expected, but...
No, I think that we cover everything really well.
Okay. The next one, the next section is called, I called it Modding Philosophy / Technical Constraints. It's very interesting. I've got crazy interesting questions. You often say that your mods stick closely to intended Dragon's Dogma 2 designs. So how would you describe that philosophy? Do you think it's important to keep this vanilla feel of the game intact?
I actually don't think it's that important to stick to the vanilla design. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that the mods feel good to play with. It's just that in most cases, working against the vanilla design rather than with it results in janky mods, right? Especially in DD2, because the vanilla gameplay is already so fun and so well thought out that if you try to deviate from that, you're probably going to do something that feels janky. But for example, my favorite Skyrim mod, which is called Spell Siphon, what it basically does is that it removes Skyrim's combat and swaps it out for another one, which is much more fun. So that sort of thing where you don't follow the vanilla design, that can work if you're willing to polish your mod until it feels like it would fit in vanilla, then it can work. It's just that it's much harder. That's why working with the vanilla design is usually better, but not necessarily.
That's a great answer. I personally don't have I don't think that sticking to vanilla, and I'm not talking about assets only, I'm talking about the design and visual part of it. I don't think it's important. I agree that a mod should just be fun, a fun addition to the game. If it does that, it does its job right.
It's a reasonable approach to try to stick with the vanilla design. It's just that it's harder if you don't. It's harder to make it polished.
What are 3 things, in your opinion, players often misunderstand about Dragon's Dogma 2's systems? This one doesn't have anything to do with mods. It's just about the Dragon's Dogma 2 systems, because I see a lot of discourse online. I'm curious about your take.
When you mod the game, well, you learn some things about the engine and about the systems. And I guess the biggest one is the notion that the performance issues of DD2 are due to the engine, and specifically to the engine not handling open worlds well. I haven't really seen any evidence of this. Monster Hunter Wilds has performance issues as well, but they are completely different from the ones that DD2 has. Like, they're not the same problems. So it's not like it's a systematic engine issue. So I haven't really seen evidence that DD2 was a test demo for Wilds, or that the performance issues come from the engine. Really, as far as I can tell, the performance issues of DD2 are mainly due to it handling all NPCs even like the butterflies and the oxen, with almost the same level of detail as the player, like Skyrim does, right? Skyrim has all NPCs there, and they all have the same level of detail as the player. They're basically the same object in game. But then in Dragon's Dogma 2, they want to load hundreds of them at the same time in the city. Yeah, that's why the performance patches made the NPC popping problem worse. Because they realized that they had too many NPCs in the city, and if you want to do that, it's better to just use a crowd system like they use in Assassin's Creed. So the engine didn't force them to use the same object for NPCs and for the player. It's just that they decided their resources were better spent working on other stuff than trying to come up with a crowd system.
Well, you just smashed my first misconception about Dragon's Dogma 2, because I was adamant about it. But again, I don't know much about it. My knowledge is very basic, but I thought that the reason why it performs like doo-doo is because it's an open world game and the engine can't really handle it properly. But again, it's very nice to know that it's good to be wrong. It's good to be wrong in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly super knowledgeable about this, but I can tell that at least that there really isn't any evidence for this. Like, this is just something that people made up. So yeah, and also Dragon's Dogma 2 released without many level of detail assets, many low level of detail assets. That's another thing that they just didn't have time to include for performance reasons. So that's another thing that they had to add later.
Well, I don't know if they're going to be doing anything anytime soon with the game, unfortunately. Doesn't look like it, at least.
No, they did add
they did?
the missing level of detail assets. Like at release it was much worse. Like the distant cities were loaded with full detail up to an insane distance, because a lot of the assets didn't have low level low poly messes. Yeah, or they get loaded with full detail and that causes performance issues.
Right, okay. This is crazy, I didn't know that. So I read somewhere that they changed with one of the updates, I don't remember which one, but with one of the updates they changed like the damage details, the ones that you see on bigger enemies when you fight them. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's a whole other beast right there.
Yeah.
To this day, we really don't know if that was intentional. I would hope not, because I can't imagine that causes so many performance issues, but who knows?
Yeah, nobody knows, and they're not communicating it well enough. They're not communicating it at all, so we'll probably never know. It's just like with Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, like some of the stories that Austin told me, some of the quote-unquote bugs in Dark Arisen were simple mistakes they just, I don't know, didn't notice or just refused to fix, like all NPCs being stuck at 1000 HP. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Boy, quick interruption from me. Thank you very much for watching this video. Projects like this take a ridiculous amount of time, work, and coordination, and the best way to support them is honestly just to keep watching. That tells YouTube this kind of long-form Dragon's Dogma content is worth recommending to more people. If you enjoy Dragon's Dogma, modding deep dives, and community interviews, consider subscribing to the channel too. Back to Nick. Are there any other things that players often misunderstand?
Yeah, well, that's the biggest one, but a few fun facts, you could say. One of them is that the casual mode that they added, a lot of people think that it doesn't affect the combat difficulty, but it does. It does. Capcom just didn't tell anyone about it. If you remember that adaptive difficulty that they were talking about in the early marketing, well, that one's just a multiplier on the damage the player receives, and in normal mode it starts at 0.7 and it goes up to 1. Right? But in casual mode, it starts at 0.5 and it goes up to 0.85. So in casual mode, the maximum difficulty that you can get is easier. So it does affect the combat. It's just that they didn't tell anyone about it.
You think it was intentional or no?
Yeah, it's definitely intentional. You can see it in the files. They made a different file for the difficulty in casual mode. It's just that they forgot to tell people that it does have this effect.
How difficult it would be for them to add hard mode. Like, again, I'm not very knowledgeable in this field, but I do know how to use custom difficulty tweaks mod, and it's pretty damn easy to make the game hard. So how hard can it be to for them to add hard mode for us?
It's really not that complicated if you just add a multiplier to the damage and knockdown resistance of enemies and all that, like DD1 did. Well, DD1 actually increased the gold you received and all that. A simple difficulty increase would be fairly easy. My guess is that maybe they don't want to do it because they think like a hard mode should have something more than just a flat multiplier on the damage. And that's fair. Like a proper hard mode should have more aggressive enemies or maybe even more enemies. But at the very least, some stat tweaks on enemies would be really nice to have.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're saying is basically to make a proper hard mode will require a lot of resources they don't want to spend or they don't have. Oh,
and another thing that it's hard to notice is those monster culling requests that you get on the roads, those random events. They're not actually random. They can actually only appear at certain locations and at certain times of day. But basically, someone went through the entire map and filled it with these locations and added several spawn conditions to them.
Mm-hmm.
So there are so many of them that it seems random, but they're not random. And I have zero idea why they decided to do that instead of a simple random system. Seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few places in the very beginning in Vermont where an NPC gets attacked by a pack of wolves, and it seems like it always happens there during the day when you leave the city and you go towards Travel Mine. There's this one spot, and you usually, if it's your fresh playthrough, you usually go there to do the monster culling quest. I mean, the monster culling quest that Captain Brunt gives you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you go there during the day because it's only natural. You reach the city, and then you complete the quest, and you sleep in the tavern or in Mildred's house, and then you go there in the morning. So, and it's always there.
Yeah, it makes sense because it's completely, it's not random at all. If you always go there at the same time with the same conditions at the same place, it will always show up.
It pretty much imitates randomness for some reason.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
But we can actually go into more detail on that when we discuss one of my mods that changes those events.
Durnehviir.
Yeah.
See, I can pronounce it properly now. It took me a while to learn how to pronounce properly. That's because I'm not a Skyrim fan. I am not. It just passed by me completely. Skyrim. I don't know why. I'm a Morrowind kid.
At least you played some of those.
No. I love Bethesda games a lot. I love most of them, actually. I like Morrowind and Oblivion and Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4. Probably that's it. I don't know. But yeah, I grew up playing Morrowind a lot, like hundreds upon hundreds of hours of Morrowind. So do you want to move on to the next question now?
Yeah.
What's the single hardest wall Dragon's Dogma 2 Modding keeps running into right now?
Well, if we're talking about consistent efforts trying to break it, it would be map editing. And I would actually give a shout out here to Shadow Cookie, which is one of the best tool makers that we have for the engine. And this guy has made an app called Content Editor. Not the Content Editor mod for Dragon's Dogma 2, but the Content Editor app that he has on GitHub. And with that app, he's basically made modding much easier for these games. And one of the things he's working on right now is map editing. And as far as I know, basic editing is possible, but there's no Navmesh generation yet. So that means that pawns and enemies wouldn't be able to walk on new terrain. So that's the final wall that remains to be cracked. So far, I've actually managed to use the tool to remove the barred doors from some doors in Dragon's Dogma 2. So like the ones in the Ancestral Chamber, I can remove those doors and all that. So some basic editing is possible right now, but the thing that is missing is Navmesh editing. Navmesh is what the AI, like what NPCs and enemies use to navigate the terrain. If you spawn them in new terrain without a Navmesh, they just sit there and can't actually move towards you.
But you as a player, as a playable character, you can, right?
Yeah, of course.
So basically solving this means that, let's just pretend that this issue is solved right now. Does it mean that entire new locations can be created?
Yeah, as far as I know, yes.
This is crazy.
Yeah, of course, taking the effort to actually create them would be a massive undertaking. But I think Austin mentioned wanting to do something like that. So maybe if he wants to try to crack that wall when he's done with his current project, then maybe we'll get somewhere.
Well, hopefully, Austin, if you're watching this, you hop on. Come on, we need a fan-made DLC. We need it now. It sounds unreal.
Yeah, if anyone wants to help with that, Shadow Cookie has a Ko-Fi, so or coffee, or well, however you wanna pronounce that.
Yeah,
but
the thing. I don't know, Ko-Fi? Yeah, so we'll actually add a splash here on the screen for anyone who wants to support Shadow Cookie. My next question is about the tools, by the way. So you released the thing called Nix Tools. It's on Nexus and it's downloadable. It's for people to grab, download and tinker, with the game and test things themselves. If Capcom released one tool tomorrow, or like made it possible to easily create one tool, what would instantly change the overall modding landscape?
The obvious answer is like a map editor, but since Shadow Cookie is already working on that, I'm gonna say a quest editor. So Shadow actually worked on that, on quest editing at first for Dragon's Dogma 2, but he gave up because the code, the way that quests are coded in DD2 is extremely convoluted, and he actually told me that his guess is that the quest tools for the game, like the internal quest tools that Capcom used, were basically not functional until really late in development, and that's why everything looks so convoluted. Yeah, as far as I can tell, he also got stuck at playing custom dialogue on NPCs. So like a quest editor that can let you add quests with NPCs that play custom dialogue, that would be like massive, honestly.
That would be a game changer, of course. We could just write the whole thing ourselves, like as a community. Yeah,
because the story is like one of the worst parts of DD2, so like being able to actually finish it, that would be massive. Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, there are people who, I don't know if they pretend to understand it. Well, I know at least one guy, Chainsaw McFacepunch, who definitely understands it more than most of the people I know, myself included. He knows a ton. But yeah, being able to finish whatever it is right now would be awesome. Thank you very much. One last question in this section. This is the last question in section 2. What's one or maybe more limitations you've learned to creatively work around?
Well, really, RE framework, like the modding framework that we use, is extremely powerful. It basically lets you access a lot of engine functions. So like it's basically the best modding tool that you could hope for without it being like an official modding tool. So in that regard, there aren't many limitations, but I guess one that I've actually learned a lot from is that some attacks in DD2 like the Unto Heaven skill from Mystic Spear Hand and the Forbidding Bolt core skill, both versions, like the charged and uncharged version. Both of those don't have any attack data. So what that means is that when you attack with it, they don't go through the damage calculation. They're meant to deal no damage, and there's no way to change that. What I've learned to do to get around this, because my mods make them deal damage, because I think it's just more fun when they deal damage, is to recreate the entire damage calculation process based on the player stats and the resistances of the enemy. And I've learned a lot from that about how the damage calculation works. It's actually fairly reasonable. One of the most sensible things about how DD2 works internally. So I've been able to use that quite a bit to fix other instances of the base damage of skills not being properly set or being just outright terrible or wrong. So that's one fun example. Yeah.
We're done with segment number 2. We're moving to segment number 3. It's called The Big Projects. The Big Projects. We'll be talking about some of the craziest mods you've made so far. This is where me and Nick are diving deeper into Nick's work. And we'll start with Dullahan. Dullahan is Nick's modular vocation overhaul for Dragon's Dogma 2. In simple terms, it takes every vocation in the game and tries to make them deeper, better balanced, and more fun to play. It reworks some of the cheesiest skills, buffs weaker options, adds new custom skills, and gives certain vocations tools they probably should have had in the first place. Warfare gets core rearmament changes, Sorcerer gets a much more interesting core kit, and broken stuff like Thief and Magic Archer gets pulled back from God mode. The important part is that it's modular, so you don't have to use every change. You can pick what fits your version of Dragon's Dogma 2 and ignore the rest. Since we started talking about Dullahan, is there a hidden rule book or something, to like a starting point you use to keep everything, fair?
Yeah, well, I prefer not to think too much about balancing the vocations against each other. Usually I just focus on balancing the skills of a vocation against each other. So like, I don't want to have one vocation that has 10 skills and 5 of them are either useless or completely broken. That's a thing that I mainly want to avoid. I want all the skills to be useful but not overpowered. And when you do that, the vocations get like a lot more options to play with. But in general, I don't really mind if some vocations are overall stronger than another, because in the end, you're going to choose your vocation based on what you like to play and not on efficiency. Like that's just...
Well, yeah,
I don't think that's how most people play DD2.
Yeah, there's no PvP also, so
yeah,
there's no need. Okay, but what I
that's it. There are some obvious exceptions like Thief and Magic Archer. So like they're obviously ridiculously overpowered.
Exactly.
And they need nerfs to almost everything they have. And not only because it's no fun to play with a vocation that can't be killed, basically, because you're immortal the whole time, but also because Bones can use it as well, like in the case of Thief, and they would be shredding enemies with Skull Splitter and with Blades of the Fire. So you also don't want Bones to be absolutely broken, and with the Thief vocation they are. And for Magic Archer, same thing. You want the party to be more or less on reasonable levels. So it's no big deal if one vocation is a bit stronger, but things like Thief and Magic Archer are just obvious cases where they needed huge nerfs.
It makes a lot of sense, yeah, but what you said about like nerfing the Thief, and Magic Archer, you didn't just do that, right? I mean, there were changes, not just nerfs, there were changes too.
Yeah, of course. Like some of the skills were so broken that I just reworked them because I didn't see them really fitting with with the rest of the design. But yeah, in general, it's not really like, as I've said before, the point of the mod is to balance the vocations and to give you more options. So yeah, the first step is to nerf the broken skills, and the second step is to add more skills and more mechanics that make the vocation more interesting without necessarily making it more powerful.
More interesting, more fun to play, yeah. Without making it too OP. I've got one minor, just very, very small question that I added just a few days ago, actually, and you don't have to answer it, but I'm very, very curious. So I maybe like a year ago made a mods video for Dragon's Dogma 2. I basically talk about the best, in my opinion, mods for the game. Dullahan was there, and here's the kicker. In the earlier version of Dullahan that I had at the time, there was an option for general, I think it was called general changes, that let you add double jump to every vocation, and it's not there anymore. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, so the reason, like, that was something I implemented. There was a mod doing that already, but I didn't like it because it didn't let you do the neutral concussive leap. Like it only let you do the one that has a direction. So I was like, yeah, I can improve this. Like I can detect whether you're moving the stick and play the correct animation. So that's why I implemented it. And the reason why I wanted to have that was because there are sections of the map that you literally cannot access if you don't have concussive leap or levitation. And I don't just mean little secrets, but there's an entire path in Battle that where you can do a significant shortcut if you have concussive leap. But if you don't, you have to go all the way around, and it's terrible, and I hate it. So that's the reason I implemented that. I removed it because later on I made another mod which is called additional pawn commands, and that one lets you, if you have a fighter or warrior pawn in your party, lets you force them into the catapult lance skill. Yeah, you can just do that on command. You can make them use the catapult skill, the catapult lance skill. So now you can access basically any part of the game without concussive leap. So once I made that, I was like, yeah, every vocation having concussive leap doesn't really make much sense. That's a thief thing.
That's fair, because even in that video I said, oh look guys, there's an option to enable concussive leap for every vocation, but I'm not gonna do it because it doesn't feel right. But a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but some people, they messaged me after that, like they're messaging me until now, like, hey, why are you saying there's a concussive leap for everyone? It's not. I'm like, wait, no, I'm not crazy, I'm not going insane, I'll go and check. So I went in, checked, and it's there. And then I realized that my Dullahan is outdated, so I updated it. It was version 4.13, if I'm not mistaken. So I updated it, and it's not there anymore.
Yeah, I get it. Actually, when Rift made a video on Dullahan, he mentioned that you can block with the fighter without a shield. And that's a feature that I removed later and put it on a separate mod because I didn't feel like it fit the design of Dullahan. But to this day I still get comments on the mod page saying, hey, I heard this lets you block with fighter, why can't I do that?
Yes, by the way, that too.
All the time.
The second one, let's pretend that Capcom reached out to you and said, okay Nick, they said, okay Nick, pick one Dullahan change and we'll make it official. Which one would you choose and why?
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, so I think I would choose the core skill rework I did for Sorcerer, like having miasma as your heavy attack instead of galvanize, and then regaining stamina using your light attacks. And it's a bit sad because I think vocations in DD2 are in general better designed than the vocations in DD1, except for Sorcerer. Sorcerer is just terrible in DD2. It sucks so much. It was my favorite vocation in DD1. I loved it. I have videos on my channel doing a solo sorcerer, and it was just amazing. But in DD2, it just doesn't work, man. It's terrible. Galvanized to solve a problem that shouldn't exist, which is that sorcerer is useless without stamina. And then they made the change from 6 to 4 skills. I actually think it's fine in general, but for sorcerer it means that you can no longer have different elemental spells for different enemies as much as you could in DD2, and then that means that the master skills need to be completely overpowered and be able to deal with all kinds of enemies, because you can no longer choose, you can no longer have like a lot of them like you could in DD1. So the entire sorcerer thing just falls apart, and I think my rework to the core skills it's a first step to fixing that. Like obviously my other changes to sorcerer also help a lot, but the core skill rework is like the most important part of that.
I unfortunately can't really comment on that because I avoid using sorcerers. I don't like them. I don't like them. I don't like them in DD1. I don't like them in DD2. That's 100% a me problem. But yeah, I'm just not a big fan of mages and sorcerers. I like mages a little bit more. Sorcerers sound more fun on paper. They're like mages with teeth. But, you know, when I think about it now, mages, they can heal us at least. And sorcerers, yeah, I don't know. I don't like them. I don't like them for different reasons.
Yeah, that's fair. The sorcerer's life is not for everyone.
It is definitely not for everyone. Fighter, on the other hand, I feel is a vocation that is just for everyone. Like, I mean, it's just everyone likes the fighter. No, not everyone likes the warrior, but everyone likes the fighter. Thank you very much for answering my 2 questions about Dullahan, and we're now moving to Durnehviir. And here's a splash. Boop. Durnehviir is Nick's dynamic encounter overhaul for Dragon's Dogma 2. It takes the monster culling events, which are usually tiny little fights against goblins and wolves and other pocket lint, and turns them into more dangerous and interesting encounters. Instead of saving some random NPCs from 2 goblins, you can now run into ogres, minotaurs, griffins, drakes, Medusa, Dullahan, Gore chimeras. It also adds nightmare culling events in the wilds, and those are designed to be specifically nasty. The mod is also built with Bestiary in mind, so Bestiary variants can show up too. Basically, it makes Dragon's Dogma 2's roads feel dangerous again, which they absolutely should. For Durnehviir, I've got 2 questions as well, and I'll ask this as a person who doesn't understand how any of this works. I can't really put my finger around to why Capcom didn't make the monster culling events more varied. It's usually, you know, just goblins and wolves. Durnehviir changes that, completely flips the script and lets you fight more challenging enemies. So my question is that, do you think there was some sort of a limitation on Capcom's end that resulted in what I think is a very undercooked and lackluster mechanic?
I don't really know what to think about the monster culling events. As I said before, they're not random. Like, someone really went through the effort of going all over the map, picking out hundreds of locations and adding possible NPCs and all that. Like, for each of these locations there are like 8 possible NPCs, and all of those can be tied to different spawn tables for the enemies. They're usually not, they're usually just the same spawn table for all the NPCs, but someone really went through all that effort of putting all of those NPCs there and spawn conditions for the events and all that. And all of that just to put goblins and wolves on them, just seems so weird. Like, I don't understand what's going on there. Like, the system that handles and the thing is that the system that handles these calling requests also handles the Oxcart ambushes, which can include bosses. Like, they include bosses in vanilla.
Yeah.
And the camp ambushes, which in vanilla they don't include bosses, but in one trailer for the game they did include it. Like, there was a trailer where the camp raid included a griffin encounter, and they removed that from the game. in the release version. So clearly, dynamic boss fights were at least considered for these events. So my best guess is that late in development they realized that the boss variety they had wasn't good enough for Culling requests to also include bosses. So they turned them into fights against regular mobs. They were like, we don't have enough bosses. If we make them appear in these fights as well, players are going to get tired of them. But I think they underestimated how fun the combat is in DD2, because a lot of players like me, we don't mind fighting the same bosses over and over again. So that
we actually love it. I love it.
That explains the success of Durnehviir.
Before enemy spawner was a thing, before I discovered enemy spawner, there was a time I was just running around looking for bosses to fight. Because of how fun it is. Different team of pawns, different vocations, different everything, experimenting. It's super fun. I agree. So the second question, there are also other mods. There's epic encounters and random encounters. Durnehviir is pretty different. It's very different, but they're still compatible. Was it hard at all to make it compatible? And do you think it's important at all to make mods that are compatible with each other?
Well, the changes these mods do are completely different. Like they alter different things. So really, I didn't have to go through any effort to make them compatible. But other than that, obviously the more compatibility between mods, the better. So users can choose what they want without worrying about compatibility issues. And even still, nowadays I don't really have many issues with that, because all the big gameplay changing mods are made by me. So I don't really have any issues with compatibility.
Do you have like a secret modder coven where you just meet up all together, like, okay, we have to make our mods compatible?
No, at most just a single communication between the authors in Discord. Like in my Discord server, we actually have like a lot of the active mod authors here. So.
A question out of nowhere. How often do you modders talk to each other?
Fairly often. For example, I talk to Shadow Cookie all the time, usually because I'm stuck working on something and I have no idea what I'm doing. And he helps me with that.
That doesn't look like it, man. That doesn't look like you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Yeah. I didn't really know how to code before I started working on DD2. Like I saw some of that in college, but it was all about doing really complicated math stuff, but nothing about coding video games or anything like that. So I actually had to learn from scratch, and Shadow Cookie helped me so much. Like I wouldn't have been able to do it without him. All the other modders on the scene, they were really helpful. So that's one of the main situations where we talk to each other when we need help with something, or when we need, or when we want to talk about compatibility, as we said. I actually plan to talk to the author of Random Encounters, or at least the person who is currently maintaining it on Nexus, because I need to make that compatible with Bestiary, because it's not fully compatible yet. So eventually I'll get to talking with them and making them compatible. So we usually talk really fairly often.
Okay, no covens then. All right. So do you want to? So shout out to Shadow Cookie again, and do you want to shout any other mod authors out right now? Because we can, add little splash screens. Yeah.
I'd love to shout out Alpha Somega, because he's the guy that made Skillmaker
and Monster in Fighting, I think.
Yeah, he figured out so much about DD2 modding. Again, without him, the modding scene wouldn't. Without him, Bestiary wouldn't exist either. So and also Excellent, he's called on Discord, who also publishes a few mods. But unfortunately, both of these two are apparently gone from the modding scene. Like they haven't been active in months. So shout out to them, but yeah, hopefully they come back.
Hopefully they come back at some point. Yeah, Monster in Fighting is one of my favorite mods. Like, it's always in my load order. Always. It's so good. All right, thank you very much, Nick. We're moving on to the next big project. It's a very interesting one. It's called Unofficial Dragon's Dogma 2 patch. And here's the explanation. The Unofficial Dragon's Dogma 2 patch is basically Nick's cleanup crew for all the weird little bugs and rough edges Capcom either ignored or accidentally left in the game. It fixes things like griffins taking bizarrely low damage from arrows, goblin torches hitting you multiple times in a row, Levin's broken thunder sounds, broken monster culling conditions, and even the fact that it couldn't rain at night. It also adds some quality of life tweaks, trading with pawns from further away, sprinting outside combat without stamina drain, and stopping random pawns from ambushing you with unwanted small talk. This one is a very important mod, and in my opinion, it's one of the most important mods because it's built on this, philosophy of fixing what improves the experience without altering the intended things, the intended balance. Let me just pick your brain a little bit on this one. With it, you fixed bugs that survived multiple official patches by Capcom. So what was the fix that made you go, like, how the hell did they even ship it like that?
Well, there are two like that, actually.
Yeah?
Two that stand out. Because the rest are like minor issues or even fixes that only really matter if you're modding the game. But these two are like crazy. The first one is the sounds of Levin when you use the skill Levin, the lightning skill for the mage and the sorcerer. That they're just bugged, and they've been bugged since release, and they just don't play as you should. They should play one sound per strike. But it doesn't, it bugs out. And this actually happens with pretty much every lightning sound in the game. They bug out when you try to play them together. Mm-hmm. And it's insane that they didn't fix that. Like it's the first thing that anyone that plays mage or sorcerer notices.
It only applies to lightning skills?
As far as I know, it's only lightning sounds, yeah.
Lightning sounds, yeah. That's crazy. I didn't know that. But I mean, to be fair, I'm not a mage/sorcerer person. What's the second one?
Oh, yeah, the second one is the griffins receiving less damage from arrows than from other attacks. That one's so bad that the weak spot sound doesn't even play when you're shooting at their heads. There's a bow in the game that deals extra damage to the griffins, and it feels like a joke that they included this bow while not fixing this bug, because even with the bow, you're not even close to dealing the same damage that a fighter of the same level is doing, against the griffin. It's crazy.
It is crazy, yeah. Actually, we'll be talking a little bit more about the griffin problem later. That's a part of my next question. What is a bug? How can you define a bug? One of the things that Unofficial Dragon's Dogma 2 patch fixes is raining. It wasn't raining at night, which is absolutely crazy. It looks like I can definitely call it a bug or an oversight, but the griffins receiving less damage with arrows, could it be an intentional mechanic? I don't know. I mean, it kind of sounds stupid if you think about it, but here's the question. When you do a bug hunt of some sorts, is there like a certain way you decide which one needs fixing and which one is just, dogma jank that, makes it so charming? I'm just interested in your thought process when you're hit with something that you're not sure is a bug.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, the mod is called Unofficial patch. So it's not just bug fixes. If something is janky, but you could argue it's an intended mechanic, but the game just feels better if you remove it, and it's an obvious change to make, then I'm going to include it in the patch. It's no big deal, and I make all the changes optional. So if someone doesn't like it, they can just turn it off.
Yeah, it's modular.
So yeah. So that pretty much sorts out the problem. You make it optional, and if it's a change that really improves on the experience, then you can consider it like something worthy of being in the unofficial patch. Really, some of the changes are just things that I didn't want to have on 500 different mods published on Nexus, because that's just a pain in the ass.
No, yeah.
So some of those are definitely worthy of just being in a single patch altogether. And for the case of the Griffin, though, I think it's definitely a bug, because like you can make a glass cannon build with the archer that one-shots every boss in the game with Heavenly Shot, with the Master Skill, including Drakes, which are significantly stronger than Griffins. And yet with that build, you're barely scratching the Griffins with it. Like, it's insane. There's no way that this discrepancy was intended.
How would you define a bug? What is a bug?
Well, I guess when I look for them, I look for things that just stand out and might not be intended, or might be intended but don't really work with the rest of the game. So yeah, if you look at the things that I'm calling bug fixes, so things like goblin torches hitting you several times in a row.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's sort of intended, like in a sense, like they just left the hitbox of the torch active. But when you play it and you get hit like 6 times in a row by a torch and you lose all your HP, when you play it, it feels like a bug. So it's not like we can give like an easy definition. It's just things that feel like they shouldn't be in the game in the first place.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can do mental gymnastics and kind of explain it in your head. Like, okay, so the torch kind of sticks to you and it burns for a couple of seconds before it falls off. Yeah, it kind of can be justified, but yeah, it's still dumb. It's still dumb. This is it for the unofficial Dragon's Dogma 2 patch. I'd like to now talk about the meat, the magnum opus, Bestiary. I'd love you to introduce the mod, tease the features, explain what it does.
Yeah, so Bestiary is it's the most impactful mod I've made so far.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, don't get me wrong. I think my other mods do improve the experience of DD2, but none of them really tackle the biggest issues that DD2 has. So things like enemy variety and the bosses being too passive. Well, that's exactly what Bestiary tackles, and those two I think are truly some of the biggest problems that DD2 has, right? Alongside the story and the performance and the dungeons being sort of simplistic. So those would be like the big ones, the big problems. And it's easy to focus on the small problems with mods.
Mm-hmm.
But for Bestiary, and I'm finally tackling some of the biggest ones. So what does it do? Well, at first it was fairly simple. In vanilla, a lot of bosses idle way too much, they're way too passive. So for example, the ogres and the chimeras are especially bad at this. They will spend half the fight just looking at you.
Yeah.
I literally have videos of a chimera not attacking me for a solid minute while I just look at it. Like, it's terrible. So the basic idea of Bestiary was this. I keep track of how long the enemy has been in an idle animation,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's been in an idle animation for too long, I play an attack animation on the boss. That was the very basic idea. But over time, it evolved into something more, because I realized I could play not just single attack animations, but entire combos. And then I started to add mechanics and to add functionality to this. And I ended up with a node system for the enemies that is pretty much what Skillmaker can do, but even more complicated in some aspects. It's also missing some other aspects that I ended up not needing, but it also has things that Skillmaker cannot do. Like, literally, you cannot do it with Skillmaker, or if you do, your game will absolutely die. Like the performance will drop massively. So in Bestiary, I can do a lot more things because I'm coding everything myself, and I can use custom functions. And the result is just completely different, completely new movesets and mechanics for the monsters. And then I realized that I could also single out some enemies and turn them into variant enemies with different colors and with different movesets and with different weaknesses and different stats and all that. And so, for example, I made, for example, the Drake versus Cyclops fight in the Ancient Battleground is now a Worm versus Temper Cyclops fight. And so the Worm is a spellcasting variant of the Drake, just like in DD1. And the Temper Cyclops is a fire variant of the Cyclops, which is original. Like, I didn't base it on monsters from previous games, but what it does is that it can cast spells, like fire spells. And so thanks to those variants, you have more enemy variety that is sorely missing in vanilla. So yeah, that way I tackled two of the biggest problems that DD2 has, which is the bosses being too passive and enemy variety. So that's why it's the most impactful mod I've made so far.
It is a crazy mod. I started a new fresh playthrough, and it was like a new game plus playthrough, and I went out. So I made a couple of quests. So I went. First of all, I tried to fight a Cyclops, a regular Cyclops. Then I just decided to spawn a few enemies and fight them. And I played as a warrior with like a basic first two-handed sword. And they kicked my ass. Like the vanilla, the difficulty was the vanilla difficulty.
Yeah. Were you playing solo though?
No, I wasn't playing solo. I was playing with I was with two pawns. They were kicking my ass. I mean, I did beat them. I was also extremely rusty, because I took a massive break, so I don't remember the last time I played Dragon's Dogma 2, like for real, like, you know, in a challenging way. So
it's like playing it for the first time again.
It is like playing it for the first time again, especially for a lot of people. Combat is the main selling point of the game, and it's been completely reworked. So, do you want to add something about Bestiary, or do you want me to move on to the question? Because I have one single question about it. It's about Mura. Is it Mura or Mura, by the way?
I don't know. I would say Mura because I'm Spanish, but like...
I'm talking to you right now, and my wife is, she's very supportive. She's like, she checks out everything I do, and she's in a different room, and she just messaged me like, are you sure it's Mura? Maybe it's Mura.
I just asked him.
yeah, I will. But I mean, we're all of us are from different parts of the world, which is so very cool.
Yeah.
You're from Spain. I'm from Russia. Rift is from Norway. Mura is from Canada, I think. Austin is from the US, and you know, all the different dialects and everything. So I don't think it's a problem. All right. So here's my question. The new variants look fantastic. The Black Griffin is just. It's so creepy, you know, creepy in a good way. How do you guys collaborate? So you collaborate with Mura, damn it. How does the process actually work between you two?
It's you may be surprised to hear this, but it's actually a bit of a pain in the ass.
Oh, really?
But it's not our fault though. It's because we mainly just send all the files over Discord, and Discord sucks at keeping track of stuff. So the proper way to work together on a project like this would be to use GitHub. But unfortunately, I don't know how to use it. So we basically just send everything over Discord and share it on the server, and it's a bit of a mess a lot of the time. But other than that, Mura is honestly an absolute delight to work with. Mm-hmm. He's probably the most knowledgeable player in the community. Like, he's played this game so much, and as such, he's so good at finding any obscure issues or anything that might not be working properly, and also knowing what kinds of behavior are just weird vanilla behavior and not an issue with our mods. And he always gives clear and consistent feedback. So honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better partner.
This sounds so wholesome. I'm just so happy to hear that. Because I can't really imagine how it works. How do people collaborate when they're in different time zones? And
yeah, that's also an issue because most of the time when I'm awake, he's asleep, and vice versa. So
well, it's much easier for us, for you and I, because we have like a 2-hour difference. I had a pleasure to talk with Mura over Discord. Just text. It just felt so nice. A few days ago, a day ago, I went through the Nexus Mod page for Bestiary, and I absolutely loved how you added little descriptions for every single monster and variant.
Yeah, that was Mura actually.
It looks so cool, and it's so clear that it's full of passion, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
But what I remember, and I can't unremember, is that there was something about Chimera. You said something along the lines of, "Don't go fight the Chimera unless you want to suffer." At least early on. Yeah.
Yeah. So see, the problem with that is that Chimera is actually 3 characters in the game.
Yeah.
What?
Like
it's literally 3 NPCs stitched together, right?
Okay.
So the goat, the serpent, and the lion. They're 3 characters that can act independently and have their own health and animations and all that. And so when I made Bestiary, I was really worried about the Chimera because I didn't know if I was going to have to modify my system to handle the Chimera. But as it turns out, I didn't have to, because my system can handle NPCs, and the Chimera is just 3 NPCs stitched together. So I just handled the 3 of them separately. And the result of that is that fighting the Chimera feels basically like fighting 3 bosses at once, because they act independently. So my guess is that that's why the Chimera is so passive in Manila, because they realized they had 3 characters that could absolutely destroy you if they made them aggressive. But that's exactly what Bestiary does. And so even though all the enemies are harder with Bestiary, the Chimera is just on a different level, and the Gore Chimera is especially brutal. Like, people are... I added that warning because I didn't want people complaining in the comments saying, "Oh no, Chimera it's too hard."
Too overpowered.
It's meant to be. Yeah.
I mean, you can't please everyone. It's always like that. Some people complain that it's too easy. You make it harder, they complain it's too hard. There's no way, pleasing everyone. Mura mentioned that it's really hard to do something with golems because of the head topple thing. Like they lose their head, and it just adds certain complications. Are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, it's just that golems have the most unique mechanics out of all the enemies, because you can push them over and they just get disassembled. And they also have a mechanic where if you hit them with magic, they freeze, and you can then topple them over. So I wasn't sure how that was going to interact with all the animations and the custom movesets of Bestiary. So in the end, I decided not to include them. We may try to do it at some point. It may actually be not an issue at all, but we didn't want to risk going there and opening that box, because the mod was complicated enough already. So yeah, at some point we will try to include the golem, but for now, due to its unique mechanics, it's going to stay vanilla.
I see. So you said that the Chimera is 3 characters, acting independently, and Mura said that it's not possible, at least for now, it's not possible to remodel enemies. So like create new enemies from scratch or remodel the existing ones. Is it possible to, I guess it's remodeling, so it might sound like a dumb question, but is it possible to, like, let's say you take the Chimera and remove the goat part and just make it 2 NPCs just to make it look like a lion, like a huge lion?
Not really.
Is it even in the realm of possibility?
For starters, if you want to do that, it would be easier to just use the GARM model, because they actually share animations and the base model is the same.
Okay.
But in the case that you're asking about, if you kill, like if you destroy the NPC corresponding to the lion, it doesn't actually remove the lion visually, it just prevents it from doing animations. The lion character is the main Chimera character, and it has the goat and the snake stitched together. So the NPCs for the goat and the snake are actually dummies, and they're used for the AI and for playing the animations. But the actual models of the goat and the snake are in the lion model, so it's not really possible in that sense.
But if we take the GAM, for example, and just dress it in a lion suit, I know it sounds dumb, but I'm a dilettante, so this is the way I talk to people. If we take the GAM and take the GAM animations, but then slightly change the model itself. I know it's not possible now, but will it be possible if there's like a modeling tool to just remove the goat visually to make it look like a lion with a long snake tail?
I mean, if we have modeling tools and someone with the expertise to make a model for it, I guess, sure.
So it's such a dumb question, I'm so sorry. Alright, not gonna waste your time anymore. The future of Dragon's Dogma 2 community. I've got a few questions that I think will be very interesting. It will be very interesting to hear your answers. So the first one is, what do you think people get right about Dragon's Dogma 2? Again, I see a lot of discourse on the internet, on Reddit. A lot of people argue about like skill slots and pawn AI and inclinations. So what do you think they get right?
Well, I think almost everyone who has played it agrees that the main story sucks. Like it's just unfinished, completely unfinished.
It has missing
characters. Yeah, the characters warn you that your actions will have consequences, but that never happens, or almost never happens. And it never happens in the main story as well. Like where it happens is in the side quests, which are actually finished. Like this is a problem for the main story especially. Like not the side quests. The side quests are mostly fine. But yeah, during the main story, you barely interact with the 2 human antagonists, and like they're just there. You barely interact with them. At least in DD1, you interacted with the Elysian, with the leader of Salvation, and he actually opposes you and sends goons against you and fights you. But these 2 just don't do anything. Like Theseus can barely be considered an antagonist. He doesn't really do anything against you after the start of the game, of course, because he sends you to battle. And the story just seems to stop the moment you enter battle. So it was the most disappointing part of DD2 by far.
It is very disappointing. He also at some point becomes your friend for some reason.
Yeah, in one of the most delusional quests I've ever seen, which just seems like half the quest was cut with Theseus doing like random dialogue lines while you run around the city. Like, what the hell was that?
I actually think that's not a part of a quest was cut, but the like multiple quests, because it's just it's also so sudden, right? So he's like this enemy guy, scary, dude. The first time you see him, he's wearing this mask, like a carnival mask and everything. When you peek through the little hole in the wall, he looks like and acts like an evil dude. But then all of a sudden you just, okay, I'm gonna bring the sword to him. It's so crazy. It's just so, it feels like there was a development, and there was something that kind of led to you bringing the sword to him, but it was just cut for one reason or another.
Yeah, but I was actually talking about that and more war quest where you run around the city with faces and he starts saying random dialogue lines at you. Like that quest seems like have 90% of it cut. Like it makes zero sense.
Zero sense, yeah.
But yeah, bringing him the sword also doesn't make any sense. That I didn't even think of that because I have like blocked out that part of the main quest.
Yeah, it just doesn't exist.
It was so bad.
Well, what do you think about, like, a lot of people say that having less skills in Dragon's Dogma 2 is actually a bad decision?
I actually disagree with that. I think 4 skill slots is mostly fine in DD2, with the only exception of Sorcerer maybe needing something more. But the thing is, DD2 has a lot more options than DD1 in combat. Like you can push and pull on the bosses. When you jump, the height from which you jump affects your damage and your stagger. You can jump on enemies and grab them, and you can throw them at each other or throw them against a wall. So you have a lot more options and you have more core skills. So I think it makes sense that they were like 6 skill slots might be too many, and 4 skill slots makes more sense. And actually, when I was experimenting with Dullahan, at some point I gave Fighter like a lot of core skills. Like I added the shield panel, which it currently has, but I also added a way to do Cloud Wall Slash without having it equipped, and also the Gutting Skewer as well. And honestly, it just felt extremely bloated. It felt like it was too many options in combat. So maybe it's just me, because maybe if you're used to like action games, you don't think that's too many options. But I personally think that the 4 skill slots for DD2 is just fine.
Just enough, yeah. Also, some of the core skills in DD2 were skills, like, actual skills in DD1, like Task Tools, for example,
Yeah, and with Warrior, now you don't need to equip like one skill for defense, because your core skill lets you defend already.
Yeah, the shoulder bash.
Yeah. And same thing for Fighter, because Task Toss really was... I always had it on. It was like, it wasn't really a skill set, because I always had Task Toss. So
now you can also combine some of the skills with core skills, which is so fun. Like, you can do a Blink Strike, and then charge up the Task Toss during the Blink, and then release it as you connect, and just send them flying. It's so fun. You can also catch them with Gouging Skewer. Like on their way down, when they're like falling down, you can actually jump and just nail them to the ground with Gouging Skewer. It's so cool. By the way, did you see the Punk Ducks Dragon's Dogma 2 video? And they made a very interesting video essay about Dragon's Dogma 2.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
I remember them saying, every vocation now has 4 skills. Well, good, because I played Warrior in Dragon's Dogma 1. And the Warrior had 4 skills. It was a great part in the video. It's a very good video, by the way, if you haven't seen it. Sort of documentary / I don't even know what it is. It's a game changer. It can literally change the way you see Dragon's Dogma 2. It's a great video. The next question I have here is, what do you think people get wrong constantly about Dragon's Dogma 2?
Well, I already mentioned some things earlier, and the skill slots. Maybe another one that I think I disagree with most people about is the limited fast travel. I think it's great. Honestly, there have been so many moments, so many interesting moments that I've had in DD2 that I wouldn't have if I could just fairy stone everywhere. Like, for instance, griffins are a form of fast travel.
Fast travel, yeah.
And a lot of the time, for example, when you do the Nameless Village quest, instead of fast traveling back to the city with a fairy stone, you can just look for a nearby griffin, fight it until it leaves, and then ride it back to the city. And you can actually ride it back to the city maybe sell something at the merchant or put something in the inn, and then run back to the griffin and ride it back to its nest if you want to keep traveling. So like those kinds of moments, you're not going to get them if you just fast travel everywhere. So that's why I love the fast travel system in DD2. Actually, in DD1, the original fast travel system, where there was only one port crystal at the main city, and then you got only another port crystal later, I actually prefer that. When they added more fast travel and the Eternal Fairy Stone and more port crystals and all that in Dark Arisen, I actually think it lost a little bit of its charm with the travel systems. Like, I understand people are busy and all that, but personally, I just like the limitation.
I agree. I don't see it as a limitation. Limited fast travel, I don't see it as a limitation. I see it as a design choice, and I totally agree with you. But at the same time, I kind of can understand why some people, get annoyed. Like, if you are a newcomer, if you just came, you just downloaded, bought the game and downloaded and you're playing it and you're like, oh, this fast travel sucks, then I disagree with you. But if you're like a seasoned player and you just want to remove all the, quiet parts and just have, boss fight after boss fight after boss fight, then I understand that, fast travel can be, like a nasty limitation. But again, if you're a seasoned player, you probably have a lot of fairy stones and port crystals. You can put port crystals everywhere you want, like a Medusa's nest, a Griffin's nest, and just wait for them to respawn and just fly to these spots and fight them. Anyways, I agree. I also like Oxcarts. I like to ride Oxcarts. Sometimes I just ride them, I don't doze off, I don't sleep.
So I basically made a mod that lets you, while you're sitting at the Oxcart, it lets you make the Oxcart run if you want by pressing a button. So it can make those travels faster when you want to. And you can still stop it if you want, so you can enjoy the view at some point. And a pretty simple mod, but I couldn't have made it if I hadn't made Bestiary as well.
Where do you see Dragon's Dogma 2 modding 1 year from now?
I think, for one, I think I'll have finished all my currently planned projects, hopefully, because I actually have a lot of them. Like, you wouldn't believe how many stuff I have planned and the scope of it. But hopefully I'll have finished all of them by then. And of course I'm not going to give any details here.
No, of course not.
If in 1 year I have actually finished all my current projects, that means most of the bigger issues of DD2 will have been addressed, with the exception of the story, which I don't think we can fix with mods yet. I don't know if that will change at some point. But I also think that map editing will be a thing, because Shadow Cookie is actively working on it every day. And if it is, I may have made a few extensions to the caves, because they really need it. Like the caves in DD2 really need some expanding. And lastly, I may have dabbled in some custom quest scripting, so like something like DD1's notice board quests. Nothing that actually uses the game's quest system, because that one is a convoluted mess, but like keeping track of the quests through custom scripts, like something like that.
This is something I really should have asked you myself, because I'm the internet's #1 advocate for Dragon's Dogma 2's notice boards. I'm just so upset they're not there. It's so silly, and I just don't get it. What should change for the Dragon's Dogma 2 modding scene to reach levels of Skyrim or even Elden Ring, and how do you imagine contributing? This question, it kind of lost a little bit of its punch because, you partially answered it.
So first and foremost, I'm not really, I'm not a tool maker. Like, I make mods, which is cool and all, but I don't really, the people that really advance the modding scene are the people making tools for modders, and it's a bit sad because they don't get all the excitement and all the hype that the actual mods get. But really, we couldn't do it without them.
We should change that, actually. We should change that.
Absolutely.
We should change that, and I will do my best to get in touch with Shadow Cookie. If they want to talk to me, just sit for like an hour or something. We could make a video out of it. Anyway, I slightly disagree with you. I just want to say it right now. It's not only them who push the community forward. I think it's both of you guys, both modders and tool makers. It's just you.
I mean, obviously, without the modders, the tools are useless, right?
I mean, it's a chicken egg question. It's a chicken and egg question because, I mean, if there's nobody to make mods, there will be just tools and everything, and that's it. Like without people who actually know how to operate them. But to continue your answer.
Let's say it's a joint effort, and right now the two main roadblocks that separate DD2 from modding games that from games that have official modding tools are map editing and custom NPCs with custom quests and voice lines and all that. And I don't have the skills to build either, right? But fortunately, there are people who do, like Shadow Cookie. And honestly, adding custom NPCs and custom enemies even, like with custom assets and all, I think that's going to be like the hardest thing to figure out. At least map editing is reasonable. But when I think of adding a new NPC or enemy to DD2, knowing what I know about all the methods and functions that handle NPCs, because they're really the most complicated part of the game, I really don't think I could do that. I don't know. We'll see. But the thing that I could build, if I were to dabble a bit into tool making, is just a scripting framework written in Lua, in the language that all the mods are written. Are written. And I could build a scripting framework precisely to make simple quests, right? As I said, not quests that are integrated into the game systems, but quests that are kept track of through custom scripts and through custom data files and all that. So that's definitely something I want to look into at some point when I'm done with all my projects, because maybe it will be something that the community will use to write their own quests, and it could be a fun thing to look at. Yeah,
it'd be an extremely fun thing to look at. What, in your opinion, hurts the Dragon's Dogma 2 community the most nowadays? As in, what we as a community shouldn't do or stop doing right now, right this very moment?
There are people who, to this very day, stick around this community just to sit on DD2. Which is a game that came out a year and a half ago. And these people just need to move on. Is it really that surprising that Capcom has no interest in the Dragon's Dogma franchise if it seems like half the player base hates the second game? But it's not half the player base. It's just a vocal minority, and that vocal minority needs to move on. It's we've heard you. You don't like the game. Move on.
Now go away. Now go away.
Yeah. What are you doing a year and a half after the game came out, still actively feeling the need to let everyone know that you don't like the game? No. Yes.
I personally think that people like that, they are in multiple gaming communities at the same time, and they just have okay, so what's my quota for today? I've got Dragon's Dogma, I've got Rise of the Ronin, I've got, Elden Ring Night Reign, and I will just go to each and every community and then shit on the games and then, farm the responses. I think some people are like that, unfortunately.
I just cannot fathom how someone could waste their time like that.
Well,
Like the only gaming communities that I interact with are the ones for games that I like. Like I think that's just obvious. Like if you don't like a game,
yeah, why would you stick around? Exactly.
yeah.
But I mean, some people just like to farm emotions. Anyway, I agree with you completely. Yeah, these people, they should move on. Go away. If someone wanted to get into Dragon's Dogma 2 modding today, right now, where should they start and what should they avoid?
At the cost of doing a shameless self-insert, I think they should start with my modding tutorials on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Because that's precisely what I wish I had when I started, right?
Okay.
Well, when I started, actually, the content editor app didn't exist, and thankfully now it does, and it's like the best way to start modding this engine. And there are mainly two types of mods that you can make for the RE engine, which are mods that modify the files, so like pack mods, let's say, because you pack them in a pack, and script-based mods, right? And the pack-based mods nowadays are really it's never been easier to make them thanks to this app. And in my YouTube channel, you have a tutorial for this app, so it's really easy to get into that. And the other thing are script mods, which are a bit more complicated to make, but also can be much more powerful. And again, I have several tutorials on them, and more that are going to eventually come out, because I haven't had exactly a lot of time lately working on Bestiary, but now that I have released it, I will probably try to finish that series of tutorials. And I honestly think they're the best way to start learning the engine and the modding tools, because usually a video format is really easy to follow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say start there and then keep going by dissecting other people's mods that are on Nexus. So yeah.
And this is where I want to genuinely point people toward Nick's YouTube channel. If you ever looked at Dragon's Dogma 2 modding and thought, this looks interesting but I have no idea where the hell to start, Nick's tutorials are probably the best starting point you're going to find right now. He covers things like file editing, scripting basics, and the basic logic of how modding this engine works. The most important thing is, these tutorials are coming from someone who actually makes the kind of mods people are constantly using. So if you want to learn, start there. Subscribe to Nick's channel, check the links in the description, join the Discord if you want to get involved, and support him if you can. Nick and other modders are doing real work to keep Dragon's Dogma 2 alive and interesting, and the least we can do is support them with attention, feedback, and proper credit. Another question, this is the last question actually. If someone wants to support your work or get involved, where should they start, and how should they do it properly?
Well, the best place to start is my Discord server. You can find the links, I guess there will be a link in the description.
Absolutely,
but
yeah.
But also in most of my big mods, there's a link as well. And yeah, the Discord server is the best place because we can gather feedback and bug reports there. Honestly, at this point, the feedback is almost more important than the bug reports. And in general, any feedback about anything that doesn't feel right about the mods is always welcome. Like that's how I get them to feel so good and to be so polished because
of the feedback, the help.
Yeah, usually by Mura. But yeah, we've had feedback, really useful feedback from other people and bug reports, and those always help. Yeah.
What about monetary support? You do have Ko-fi or whatever it's called, Ko-fi, Lo-fi, Ko-fi, coffee. I'll also add the link there if somebody wants to support the work monetarily. It's not expected, but it's there. And that's it for this section. Are you ready for the possibly the dumbest part of this interview?
So let's go ahead.
Okay, so here's how it works. It's what I call Blitz questions. I mean, that's how it's called, I guess. So I've got 10 questions I carefully prepared, and they're extremely simple, just dumb, fun-coded questions. You'll have to pick one and give me no context at all, and we have to go super fast. 10 questions in a row. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Dark Arisen or Dragon's Dogma 2?
Dragon's Dogma 2.
Playing or modding?
Modding.
Single player or co-op?
Co-op all the time.
Fix the bugs or add new content?
Add new content.
One big boss or 5 dangerous small enemies?
One big boss.
Difficulty spikes or steady difficulty curves?
Steady difficulty curves.
Ship it now or polish it forever?
Polish it forever.
You're a perfectionist.
Yeah.
But this one is good. Perfect balance or wild jank? Charming wild jank.
Perfect balance.
The Elder Scrolls 6 or Dragon's Dogma 3?
Dragon's Dogma 3. Not even a question.
And the last one, Fest or Ballsack?
Fest, of course.
Oh, seriously? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's just two of us in team. You're Team
Yeah.
Fest. I'm Team Ballsack. I'm Team Ballsack.
Oh.
Austin's Team
Don't
Ballsack.
you know? Don't you know that the best quote in all gaming ever? Fest saying to the Duke, "I would never violate His Grace's privacy while he violates Milady's privates." That's.
I'll be honest, I pick Ballsack purely because of how, like, it's pure comedic value, because of how dumb the name is. I mean, I understand that it's a reference to Balzac, the writer, because Japanese people like Balzac. There's a Japanese horror punk band called Balzac. It's rooted there somewhere, but yeah, I pick Ballsack because of how dumb the name is. I actually like Fest more. Sorry, Austin.
I just can't get over that quote from Fest.
Honestly, I thought that, we'll have like 3 people in Team Ballsack, but it's like 2-1 now. 2 people from Team Ballsack, 1 person, Team Fest. Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate you finding the time and, trusting me and, sitting down with me, talking about all this important stuff. It is extremely important stuff. And, I think a lot of people, I think more people should get kind of involved in because this is the way I see it. This is the future of Dragons. Like Capcom, it doesn't look like they are going to give us something anytime soon.
Yeah.
So this is the way for now, and I'd like more people to get involved. I'd like more people to check out your tutorials and your channel and Mura's channel. Mura is doing great trailers for Nick's mods, so you can go there and check them out. They're really well made, and I am a YouTuber. I know what I'm talking about. They're really well made. That's it then. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.